and say, go, Nats. Hit it, hit it. Come on, y'all. Let's say, go, Nats. One more time.
All right, National Spring Training getting going this week, what sets up to be probably the most unique Nats camp we've ever had. A, coming off a World Series championship. B, remember, they share their spring training facility with the Houston Astros. And then C, right, the Astros just hired the former Nats manager, Dusty Baker. So the next few weeks could be interesting. But from a standpoint of on the field, what's going to be happening with the Nats, I think three big questions to be thinking about. Number one, Carter Kieboom. Does he grab the third base job and squeeze it by the throat? I think this is the biggest question for Nats camp. Carter Kieboom sets up to be the Nats' everyday third baseman for 2020. Dave Martinez has made it very clear that's who he wants to be, the everyday guy at third. You're obviously replacing Anthony Rendon. Kieboom has been a highly lauded prospect for years. The bat certainly seems to be major league ready. The question's been the defense. We saw him at the major league level for a brief time last year, struggled at shortstop, but it's kind of an odd circumstance. Trey Turner was out. Kieboom was sort of thrust into that role. This sets up nicely, right? He's known for weeks, if not months. Third base is his job to have. It is his time to sort of ascend and become that next great Nationals position playing prospect who delivers at the major league level. You know, the Nats have done such a great job over the years. Guys like Bryce Harper and Anthony Rendon, and go back to Ryan Zimmerman, of course, more recently Juan Soto, Victor Robles. The Nats' highly hyped position playing prospects tend to work out. They don't have flops. We can debate the degrees to which they work out, but they tend to work out. So if Kieboom can seize the third base job and make it his, that sets up the infield for how they want it to be. Kieboom at third, Trey at short. You got the second base dynamic, a Starlin Castro with maybe a little bit of Asdrubal Cabrera. And then at first, you'll have that three-headed monster of Ryan Zimmerman, Eric Thames, and Howie Kendrick. But if Kieboom flops at third and he struggles defensively and the bat's not doing well, then you got to start putting Castro at third some. You got to work in more of Asdrubal Cabrera. You maybe have to use more of Howie at second base than you want. There's a domino effect there. So that's a big key, I think, for me with Nats spring training. Number one, does Kieboom grab that third base job as things are setting up? Number two would be the bullpen, right? So it stunk last year. We all know that. The Nats won the World Series, obviously, in spite of their bullpen, not because of it. There are, I think, three slam dunk guys who will be on the opening day bullpen, right? We're talking Sean Doolittle, Daniel Hudson, and Will Harris. And then after those three guys, no one's a slam dunk certainty. Now, you have people who are likely to make the team, right? Like Tanner Rainey, Wander Suero, likely to make the team. But we don't know with certainty. So what does that bullpen end up looking like? It's going to be almost impossible for the Nats to walk the tightrope they had to walk last year with the bad bullpenning, right? The bullpen's got to be at least like halfway decent. It doesn't have to be elite, but can you be middle of the pack instead of what it was last year, dead last in the major leagues in ERA? Think about it. The Nats won 93 games last regular season with the worst bullpen in the sport. If the bullpen was even passable, what are we talking about? 100 wins, 105 wins, So who is going to emerge out of those other relievers over the next few weeks to solidify what hopefully ends up being at least a halfway decent bullpen in 2020? Bullpens and relievers in general, they are fickle. Most of them are year to year. So nobody should be shocked if the bullpen ends up being a lot better. I like what the Nats did this offseason, bringing in Harris, re-signing Hudson to a pretty team-friendly contract. There were some other under-the-radar type moves, getting guys like Ryan Harper and Kyle Finnegan. So maybe those guys can help out, and who knows, maybe they end up sneaking their way out of the opening day roster. And then question number three for the Nats in terms of spring training and questions to be answered over the course of spring training would be the fifth spot in the rotation. Now, you don't need a fifth starter until weeks into the season because of all the off days early in the year, but obviously there is some uncertainty beyond the big four, right? Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, and Sanchez. So this would appear to be a three-way race: Joe Ross, Austin Voth, and Eric Fedde. It's going to be determined by a lot of different things, including the issue of options. Eric Fedde still has a minor league option. The other two guys don't. So that would seem to put Fedde in the background with, I would think, Ross as a leading contender. But here's kind of the bigger issue, right? The Nats are going to need all three guys. You're not just going to use five starters throughout the year. More often than not, you're going to use 6, 7, 8 guys over the course of a season. I think this is a huge year for Ross and Fedde. I think it's kind of like put up or shut up time for each guy because we've seen each guy at the major league level, some success, some struggling. A guy like Fetty's been sort of jerked around between starter and reliever. Is this the step forward year for him? He was a first-round pick. He was not drafted to be someone who comes out of the bullpen. Like, they drafted him to be the next great national starter for a lot of different reasons, some of which are not his fault. It hasn't happened yet. Does Fetty take the next step forward? Joe Ross. Joe Ross last year looked like it was a train wreck of a year. Spent a lot of the year in the minors, was bad out of the bullpen when he was in the majors. Then all of a sudden, late in the year, the Nats use him as a starter. He's outstanding. When Max Scherzer couldn't make that World Series Game 5 start, it was Ross who the Nats went to. Now, he won lights out, but still, just the fact that they entrusted Ross with a World Series Game 5 start tells you something. So with Joe Ross, again, like, is he going to finally cement himself as a staple in the Nats rotation, or is that not going to happen? And then with Austin Voth, he's kind of a wild card here because there's talent, but he's unproven, right? He's probably done the least of the three at the major league level. But how does that shake out, that three-way battle for the fifth spot in the rotation? And obviously, the two guys who don't get the fifth spot figure to be potential bullpen arms for the Nationals. We shall see. An unforgettable 2019, obviously. What will 2020 have in store for the Nats? We begin finding out this week.